Okay, today I have Curtis Anderton here to talk about sales process, sales structure, frameworks around selling. If you can move your sales, let's say you're selling at 10%, you move to 20%. Obviously, that's a huge jump. If you can move it 5% overall, that's an incredible jump. Everything you can do to be more efficient and better at selling and closing that gap is so important. So Curtis is an expert on this whole process. He trains B2B experts, agencies, all of these teams. Like he's got the stuff. He's got the pedigree and he knows what he's doing. So Curtis, thank you for being here today to walk us through a very intentional structure and for answering your questions. Those of you who are watching this in the recorded version, his contact info, all the details will be down below. So you can reach out to him with more questions or get clarity. He's a great person to reach out to. And for those of you here live, if you're not here live, sorry, but those of you live, we'll do Q&A at the end. So Curtis, you got it, buddy.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me. First and foremost, I'm really honored to be here and looking forward to jamming on something I love so much, which is sales and specifically being able to create consistency in sales. So we're going to dive into that. Before I get into literally sharing everything that I do on the framework side to give to you to use within your business, I want to give you a bit of a background on where all this came from, because it has been a challenge that I've been working on for years now. And so the items that I'll be talking about today, which is literally giving you the frameworks that we use on our calls, as well as the entire over level of or higher view of our entire sales process, has been built over the last few years of me trying to solve our own problems within a few different businesses. So just to give you a bit of a background on that, we're going to jump right in right after that. My name is Curtis. I've been in B2B sales, specifically B2B, for the last about 10 years or so. Now, over the last 5 years, that has been solely focused around selling high ticket agency services and then also coaching. Now, the reason I mentioned B2B specifically is everything that I do is selling to other professionals. Now, it sounds like a lot of you are doing the same thing. So whether that's selling to other businesses or just executives, for example, it is a very different process than selling to somebody who's outside of that business ecosystem, especially because a lot of these people are familiar with sales. And so the frameworks that I'm going to share with you today have been built specifically for selling to professionals and other businesses, and work incredibly well for a mastermind context just like this. So we're going to dive into that. So over the last 3 years specifically, and kind of where this system has come from, I got the honor of working with an incredible company called Bab Marketing, with an amazing entrepreneur named Eddie Malouf, really great friend and mentor of mine. And so I stepped into the business with him to take over his sales process. And at the time, which is where this was built from, was there was no system in place, nothing. There wasn't even call recordings. I had to step in and just kind of make it up as I went. And the hardest part that we struggled with early on was consistency. We'd have really good months. We'd have really, really bad months. Some months we'd be collecting almost 200K in cash. And then the next month we'd be collecting 20K in cash. And so my goal for us was to create a proper system that can create consistency. So we always have strong months and obviously allow us to grow the business. Now, about a year ago, that focus switched for me to be able to take what we actually unlocked, which created that consistency. Now the business does really consistently 100 to 150K in cash every single month, and new MRR, which has really been exciting for us over the last few years. And I've taken that framework, which we're going to share with you today, and been able to implement that into almost 100 other businesses, a lot of different agencies, a lot of coaching offers. And specifically over the last 12 months, I've been able to help just around 100 different businesses with this exact framework, which has been my passion and where my offers come from. So bit of a background on me. We'll dive into this now because I'm really looking forward to just giving you all of this, these systems so you guys can implement them on your own. So the two things that I want to drill home, if you can take anything away from this, is consistency. Number one, if you're taking notes, this is a good time to write this one down. Consistency comes from frameworks, right? Similar to having like an SOP in the back end of your business, right? Where how you onboard a client or how you get somebody results with whatever program that you're offering, you have to have an SOP for sales. And it has to be from how a person gets introduced on an intro call and or a demo call to how you even do that introduction, to the discovery, to the pitch, to the frame, to the closing process, the objection handling process. It all has to be frameworked out like an SOP so that we can create consistency. And without that, you have all these fluctuations because we're winging it, right? And so especially for you entrepreneurs that are looking to ideally remove yourself from sales one day, it is so important to have this on paper so anybody can step into your business and just run with it and actually be able to recreate what you're doing within your business. So that's number one. Consistency requires frameworks. The
Are you
next thing
sharing a
is
screen or anything? Should we be seeing a
I'm
screen?
about to. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
about to. Yeah. Where I'll walk you through the entire framework. I wanted to give
that's
you
great.
some main points here. Yeah.
Cool.
So the next thing I want to chat about specifically is I'm a big believer in human experience. So unfortunately, this world is going towards automations and AI, but we're all humans and we desire human interaction. And so sales is a human to human game, right? Unfortunately, the world right now is trying to automate that process through automated emails and automated text messages. And some people are trying to use AI to take their sales calls themselves. Um, and people want to work with humans. And so this entire process, I want you to really focus on creating an amazing human experience, which I call the white glove experience, right? Where somebody comes in and you're nurturing them through your sales process in a really intentional way so that they actually have an experience before they even work with you. And so those are the two things I really want you to focus on as we dive into the frameworks and the sales system specifically is we have to have the frameworks in place and we have to create an incredible human experience, and you will be able to see so much more success through that. So let me share my screen here and we'll jump right in. So I've been talking a lot about frameworks, and so I'm going to share with you the exact kind of like higher view of what our sales processes look like to be able to build a consistent sales process with a single closer, to be able to collect around 100 to 150K in new cash every single month within the business. Now, can everybody see my screen? Beautiful. So I've got two different sales systems here we're going to talk about. One of these are going to be focused around if you have a sales team, a setter, for example, and a closer. The other one's going to be if you are a solo entrepreneur that you're still taking all the sales calls, which is incredible, and how we can optimize that for ourselves to be able to eventually replace ourselves in sales if that's something that we want to do. So I'm going to walk you through both of these. You'll see I'm a big believer in just kind of show and tell. So I'm going to just give you everything that we actually do so that you guys can implement it, and we'll kind of go through this step by step. So first and foremost, again, we want to have every step of our sales process mapped out so we know where a customer is in every single stage of the journey. Whether you're running paid ads to get clients in, or if you're doing cold outbound or specifically organic and you have people coming to you through YouTube content or whatever that might be, obviously they all have to start somewhere. And so in this case, this is a system for a bit of a larger team, which we're going to start on. Obviously, lead's going to opt in, whether it's through your website or your landing page. What I like to do is we actually have a bit of a Zap set up within the CRM that we're using. Doesn't really matter what CRM you're using. I like to have a Zap that goes right into a Slack channel. And this allows us as a team to be very organized on who's talking to who, again, for this white glove experience we're going to talk about. And so in this case, this sales process is built for a setter and a closer. And so the Zap would trigger, client would come through, setter would go in. And what we like to do is we like to mark all the leads that come through in the Slack channel with a red, green, or yellow. And what this basically means is basically green being they're a great fit for us. Based on the form that they filled out or the application that was submitted, they look like they're a really great fit as for face value. Red being not a good fit, they're not going to be qualified, completely different niche or whatever that might be. And then yellow being we're on the fence, we're not too sure exactly. And then something else that we do is we'll actually have the setter and or the closer, whoever's involved, put an emoji of the like we designate everybody an emoji. So I'm from Canada, so I have a Canadian maple leaf as my emoji. And I put it on there when I've called that prospect. Now, the reason we have this in a Slack channel, this is not required, but it makes things very, very easy, is because at any time, anybody in the company can go into that Slack channel and they can see who called that lead, when they called the lead, if they're qualified or not. The marketing team can go in and look at all the lead quality. Is lead quality good this week? Is it good today? And this has been really, really helpful for us to be able to create consistency. Again, not 100% needed, but very, very helpful when it comes to being able to stay on top of your lead flow. After that process is done, this is where the white glove experience comes in, right? I am a really big believer in human interaction like we're talking about. So we actually use no automations. Now, some of you who love automations, you might find that hard to believe. when somebody opts into our ecosystem, whether this is at Bad Marketing, whether it's in my own business, they do not get a single automated email, text message, or anything. They get manually called and manually iMessaged, we're going to talk about, by a human being to set up an appointment. And why I'm so intentional about this specifically is everybody is so trained nowadays to know what a Zoom automation or HubSpot or GHL email looks like. And people are just like starting to just ignore them completely. And so show rate, for example, in your sales process, people are just not showing up to your sales appointments because they just don't care about these automations coming in. It's not important to them. However, when you get a call from a human being, ideally within like 5 minutes of somebody opting in, now there's this level of connection and urgency of like, I talked to Curtis when I opted in and I set up an appointment with him tomorrow. I better show up because I had a conversation with him and I have a face to the person I talked to, the voice of the person I talked to, which allows a huge increase in show rate for your meetings, which we'll talk a bit more about here in a second. So setter will manually call, and again, we're going to go over what this will look like briefly with just a single individual. They'll call them, they'll email them, and they'll send a SMS message. If you do not have an iPhone, I have been an Android person my entire life. iMessages have a 40% higher response rate than an Android SMS text message. It's crazy to believe, but it's true. So we have switched every single sales representative that I work with to a iPhone, and you'll see a massive increase in response rate because when people see an iMessage, they automatically know that it's a human being. They don't assume it's a spam or an automation. They automatically know this is a manual message going out to me. I think there's only one automation in place right now for iMessages, and that's only for GHL. And so you really has to be a human message reaching out. You can also send voice memos. There's a lot of amazing things about iMessage that are super impactful. So everybody gets a iMessage specifically. For context, to show the power of this, an average, I don't know about your guys' businesses, I want to hear about this later, but the average sales force or business will see around a 50 to, if they're in a good place, 60% show rate for their sales demos, right? That's kind of like the average that I see in the coaching space specifically. For the last 4 months in a row, we've had a 95% show rate, and that is because of iMessages. It works extremely well. It's massive. So if you don't have an iPhone, get an iPhone. I officially gave up my Android yesterday and got another iPhone today, unfortunately. So we're on the iPhone train. Again, if you have a setter, this will be a 10 to 15 minute qualification call. We're going to walk you through the framework, what that would look like. Basically, the goal for this is to create an amazing first experience, a polite, a fun, energetic experience, qualify the person to make sure they're a good fit, obviously, like which you'd like to have as your setter's doing. And then from there, obviously book an appointment for the founder and or the closer to make sure that they end up on the calendar. Cool. And then just for to be some clarity, which we're going to talk about after this, every single stage of this is in our framework. So I'll walk you guys through the exact framework I use on every single one of my calls. So the setters have a framework that they follow, from how they introduce themselves to the questions they ask to how they set up a call with me or you. Everything is all mapped out in a framework so that there is consistency with every single stage. And the nice thing about this is if, for example, a setter's having some challenges with booking calls and the show rate dips, we can go back and look and go, hey, you missed this section of the framework. So that's why the variables have changed and consistency dropped. And so now we can go back and course correct moving forward, making sure we hit those points of the framework. So moving on, I hope I'm not going too fast for everybody. Moving on, we're going to go from, they have their first setting call. It's going to go end up on your calendar or the closer calendar. Now, for me, if you have setters, I love to have the opportunity for everybody to make a good amount of money, right? My goal is to make sure all my team members make great money and they can live a very comfortable life. Now, in a setting role, sometimes it's challenging to do so. And so for me, what I like to do is to make sure I keep my setters for a really, really long time, give them the opportunity to make more money, but also train them to eventually become a closer, is I like to give them a downsell that they can sell to unqualified leads. And so if they hop on this first 10 to 15 minute call and they're actually not a qualified lead, what they have the freedom to do is they can go into this unqualified downsell opportunity where they can sell them on a low ticket thing. It could be $500, it could be $1,500. The beautiful thing about this is, one, now your setters are making commission on something they get to sell. Two, we get to liquidate ad spend, for example, or just collect more cash because now our setters are bringing in money that we weren't getting previously. So big retention play for keeping your team members, but also allows us to make more cash within the business. One thing that I want to mention here as well is if an unqualified person comes into our business or our ecosystem, I always make sure that they are referred to somebody that can help them. I'm a huge believer in this, and I really encourage you guys to start implementing this. If somebody comes to me and I can't help them, but I can pass them along to a different coach or team that can help them, I've now helped two people. I've given a new lead to a coach or an agency that's now making money from me, right? Now I get some brownie points from them, but I've also helped this prospect solve the problem that they were facing, even though I couldn't. And what's going to happen is now the coach is going to think about you when somebody comes in for them. And that prospect is going to always have a really good taste in their mouth about the experience they've had with you in your business. Highly suggest. So every single person who comes into my ecosystem is helped in some way, whether it's our services or referral elsewhere. Highly suggest that you set this up. And of course, if you can get referral kickback from this as well, great. You get to make some money from those unqualified leads as well. From there, the qualified ones are going to end up on a closer's calendar, ideally booked within the next 3 days so that there's a higher chance of them showing up. Now, this is another key factor here to increase your show rate is if we book a call, even if you're booking for yourself, you book a call for tomorrow. We do not want to assume that person is going to remember, they're going to be on time, that they're getting our automation emails, right? We never want to assume that they're getting any type of, that they're going to remember to show. And so every morning, I highly encourage you to do this within your business and or have your setter do it. Get your iPhone out and send a manual message or voice memo or video, depending on how you like to do this, saying, hey, I'm so looking forward to chatting with you at 3 p.m. today. Let me know if you need anything in the meantime. That will be massive for people actually showing up. And again, you can never rely on the automations that Zoom sends out, that HubSpot sends out, because people aren't seeing them anymore. And we have to make sure we do everything in our power to get them to show. So highly suggest that you start implementing that. Again, this is part of that white glove experience where you're giving them another personal touch point. So I love sending voice messages because they hear me, they can build connection with me, I can make a joke. Some of my closers will take a selfie of them sitting in front of their desk saying, I'm so looking forward to connecting with you later. Whatever you want to do that's on brand for you, I highly suggest it. Then obviously the person's going to show up to that call, and then you're going to have a 30 to 45-minute sales call, which we're going to go over the framework after this. After that framework is done, depending on the business model that you have, ideally you're closing that client on the call. If you're working with bigger executives that need to get decision makers involved, then ideally you're booking a second call to have that call with everybody on it to make sure that we can get the right decision makers on the call to close. Now, depending, I know some of you are working with executives that might be a part of your sales process. Some of you aren't. So then ideally you're closing on this first call. Little sales suggestion for you. No matter what, at the end of a call, if somebody's qualified and you cannot collect cash, everybody always gets a second appointment booked no matter what on that call. You have to make sure they stay within your sales ecosystem. Once they leave that call without paying, there's a 70% chance they will not come back and close. So we have to do everything we can and make sure they're on our calendar for ideally 3 days later, 2 days later, the next day, worst case scenario, the next week, but always book that second call. It'll be a huge game changer for your business model. And then ideally, this is where they'd go to onboarding, or again, the second call would start. Now, I'm not going to talk about anything to do with onboarding because that's more of an operational thing, and we're going to stick on and talk about sales. So moving on here, I'm going to send this to everybody so you have it. But we're going to go over what this would look like now if you are just yourself in your sales process. You don't have a setter. What this looks like as a single founder in sales. So same process applies, but we're going to simplify it a little bit. I suggest if you are a solo founder to get a VA to help you with the white glove experience I've been talking about. Sending the messages, giving them a call prior to, kind of like a setter, but a little bit more simplified. Maybe they're not getting on sales calls at all. They're not taking intro calls. They're just doing the messaging to make sure people are showing up. If not, then you need to prioritize this process within your business for yourself to make sure all these points are hit. And it'll be a really big game changer. So Going into the lead opting in, like we're talking about, maybe you're doing webinars, maybe you're running ads, maybe this is all organic coming from social media. If you are by yourself, I highly suggest having a more thorough opt-in process. This could be a form, this could be a checklist, whatever that might be, so that you can try to pre-qualify people through a form so that you have a higher likelihood of them being qualified, and you're not going to waste your time talking to people who aren't a good fit for you, right? The only thing with not having a setter is we sometimes are going to end up talking to people. I'm sure you've dealt with this, where somebody's not qualified and you're wasting 30 minutes of time and you care about them, so you want to help them. And then an hour goes by and all of a sudden we wasted a bunch of time in our day. So ideally, you have a really thorough form here that they complete to pre-qualify them. After that, they're going to get ideally in your funnel, they're auto booked into your calendar for them to select a time that works best for them. Going back on what we talked about is so important that every single lead gets a manual touch point. So what I like to do is, for example, in agency closers, I just myself right now, I don't have a setter in place. I'm taking care of everything as I'm building out my own sales system. And so what I will do is as soon as a lead comes in, I try to call them. I still call them immediately as fast as possible. Hey, Jim, I saw that you booked a call for tomorrow. Really looking forward to chatting with you. I only have 5 minutes here, so we're not going to have a discussion, but I just wanted to say I see that you're on my calendar and I'm really excited. Let me know if you need anything in the meantime, right? Again, now we have human interaction as soon as they opt in. The morning of, I have on my calendar a scheduled time for 30 minutes where I text everybody who's on my calendar for that day, every single day with an iMessage to make sure that they're showing up for that call. Personalize it, send a video, whatever you want to do. Make sure that's in your calendar so you do not miss this, because this is really, really important. So once that process is done, obviously I'm going to take the call. I do want to drill one last thing home. Speed to lead is extremely important. If you're not from like the sales world and you're coaching and sales isn't your background, the time when somebody opts in to when you call them really matters, or sends an iMessage, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be a call. There's been a lot of studies showing that after 5 minutes, the chances of you getting an interaction with that person can drop by sometimes 90%. It's crazy. So we have to try to call leads immediately as they opt in. And ideally, even in our text message is fine too. So try your best. Obviously, we're busy, we're coaching, we're working with people, we have families, so it's not always that simple. But as fast as you can, try to get that out. And this is the only time where I'm like, sometimes it's nice to have that automation going out, but you're still going to try to manually reach out to them. Cool. Now, before I move into this next section, this will be relatively quick. It's really important as owners of our businesses, when we're still in sales, time efficiency is everything. And so, little suggestion that I have for you for just scheduling. I know this is a lot of information, but bear with me. The middle of the day in EST time is, I like to call wartime. It's sales time. It's when the entire world is taking phone calls and being on sales calls. Do your best to have your team meetings, your admin meetings in the morning and at the end of your day, the afternoon, and leave the middle of your day open for sales calls, for calling leads, for doing follow-ups, because that's when the world is primed to take these sales calls. And so what I do is the first hour of my day is admin and team meetings. The last hour of my day is coaching calls, for example. And then everything in the middle is left for sales calls and doing follow-up so I can get more business to come in, more cash collected for my business. Little scheduling hack for you, because efficiency is super important in this stage. Now, a couple tricks. This is not necessary, but helpful. Somebody auto books in your calendar. If you can send them a resource, a VSL, a video that breaks down your offer in detail to kind of pre-warm them up, this will be really helpful for you. Because if you don't have a setter who's giving that education to them and creating that experience, we can do that through a video format. So what I like to do is have a VSL that's like 10 minutes long. It could be longer if you'd like, that you can send to them. It could be the same VSL that you're currently running, and just be like, hey, make sure you watch this before our call. And it will go over the detail, the value points of your guys' offer. So when they show up, they know exactly what you're going to be talking about. And then it's a matter of just going through the framework and overcoming any objections that could come up. Cool. Now, obviously, then you're going to take your 30 to 45-minute call, which we're about to get into. again, making sure you're booking a second call, and then onboarding. So very similar process that we just discussed from the first one. The difference is we're doing it all on our own. And instead of having a 2-call process, this is just a 1-call process now, where they're having one 35 to 40-minute meeting with us. And then they're obviously getting onboarded or ideally closed. So again, I'll send this to you to go over everything as far as so you guys can take a look at this and make sure that this is set up similar within your business. From now, I would like to get into the actual framework itself, which is the one that I use on every single call.
Y'all enjoying this so far? This is actually really, really good. Yeah,
Making
you're
sense for
very
everybody?
thorough. Very thorough.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Am I 2x speed right now, or are we okay for speed of
No,
talking?
we'll all write our questions down and we'll save them up. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let me just make this a little bit bigger so we can all read it together. Okay, so I'm just going to literally share the exact template that we use for all of our calls. So this is my agency closer sales framework. Now, I am a really big believer in using a framework over a sales script. The reason why is I hate scripts, but a script tends to change the way that we communicate. And if your personality, the way you learn, the way you communicate is not by reading out a script or memorizing a script, you can end up having a lot of salespeople or yourself that suffer in the sales process. And so what I like to do is I'm a big believer in, and you need to protect your personality and your conviction and make sales as simple as possible. And so I have more of like a checklist than a sales script, which is where the agency closer framework came to be. All right, so we're going to walk through all of this. I'm going to go through each section and give you the importance of it. But basically what this looks like is you're going to have an introduction to your call. And this is the exact, like the actual sales call that we're going to be taking, right? The first part of your call is going to be a strong introduction, which we're going to go over in detail. You're going to get a bit of an overview of what they're looking to accomplish on that call specifically. And then what I do is I have these different sections. Now, I work with a lot of agencies, so this is tailored to kind of my offer to give you kind of some context. But I go through all of these different sections, and you're going to see why these sections are so important. The first 2/3 of your sales call should be a discovery of you asking questions. We don't want to be talking about our offer. We don't want to be selling anything. All we're doing is just digging into what our prospects are looking for, their pain, all of these different factors. And these are all the different sections that you need to hit before you get to your pitch. All right, now it looks like a lot, but it goes really quickly. There's a framework that I'll talk you through, which is how to present your pitch so we can have a consistent pitch every single time. And then we get into objection handling. And also, I'll give you a bit of a nugget on top of that, which is how to collect more cash on every single call. So the importance of all these sections, which we're going to go through, is I'm a very big believer that objections are overcome through discovery and not at the end of the call. If you get an objection at the end of your sales calls, it means that you missed something earlier on in the call. For example, if somebody tells you it's too expensive, it means that you did not talk about their financials or what their business is doing profit-wise earlier in discovery. And so the reason I say this specifically is a perfect sales call is an objectionless close, and it means that you did an incredible job digging into what the prospect's looking for, their current situation, if they have a partner or not. And so for you, if you take anything else away from this framework, if you're getting a certain objection at the end of the call, it's because you're not going deep enough in your discovery. And so I want you to really drill that home. So every section of this framework is to tackle a potential objection. It also gives us a lot of insight on the prospect. So now, when it comes to our sales calls, it is very important that we set a really good first impression. How we start our call can change the outcome of the call drastically. The first 30 seconds, you have no idea how important this first 30 seconds is. When it comes to setting what I call as our sales frame, which is basically telling our prospects what the plan is for the call, we have to be able to show them that we are an expert, that we're in control, that we're detached from the sale, all within like a minute. So that way we can run our sales process to make it consistent, but also build a lot of trust with our prospects. And so in B2B especially, this is really important because I don't know about you, but when I'm dealing with executives, successful people who are very busy, they want to get to the point. Tell me how the price is. What do you guys even do, right? And so we have to be able to take control of our calls really early on through a really strong frame set or an introduction. All right, so what this looks like is I'm a big believer in not building rapport. Now, depending on your offer, there might be some nuance to this. But for me, I don't want to talk about the weather. I don't want to talk about what your day looks like or how many dogs you have on a sales call specifically. And the reason why is when we do this, it opens up a moment of time for the prospect to take over our sales process. They have an option to step in and go, hey, I don't have the time to talk about the weather, so let's get to this. And now all of a sudden you've lost control of your sales call. And so for me, what I like to do, and I'll give you the exact way I start every single call. The person, as soon as they hop into Zoom and I see the mic unmute, I immediately welcome them. I don't give them the chance to say anything. Hey, how are you? So and so, right? They're going to say good. I only say, how has your day been so far? And everybody always says like good or fine. And before they can ask me a question, like instantly, I'm immediately going into starting the sales call. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today. My name is Curtis. On this call, we're going to be digging into X, Y, and Z, all the packages and pricing. And I'm going to be asking you a bunch of questions on your business or your situation. And then we'll go from there. How does that sound, right? So I'm setting the itinerary for the call so that they know what the order of the game plan is. But I'm also showing them that I'm fully in control of this and they don't have the opportunity to step in and take over. All right. So this will be customized to you. I highly encourage you, always introduce yourself. Never assume somebody read your email or read your website and knows who you are. And always say your role. I know a lot of founders who will call themselves account executives because they don't want to say that they're the founder of the business for some reason. I don't know why it is, but it happens a lot. Always introduce yourself as your role. Hey, my name is Curtis. I'm the owner of X, Y, and Z company. You need to make sure that you share that because entrepreneurs especially want to talk to other owners and CEOs. And so we need to make sure that we let that be known. So make sure you introduce yourself on every call, introduce your role, set the itinerary, and then we can move on to the sales process. So there's an example here that you can watch. And I also have like a 20-minute training I can send you that goes over this in much more detail. Now, what I like to do is getting into the actual sales framework. Again, the reason why this is a framework, we must go over every single one of these topics. It doesn't have to be in order, but ideally every single topic so that we can have the same process on every single call, which allows us to create consistency within our sales process. If we go over every same point on every single call and ask the same questions on every single call with the same energy, we're going to have the same outcome, ideally, right? There's some nuance to it, but ideally. And so we have to make sure we cover all these topics, all right? So for me, I am a big believer in just kind of like letting the prospect tell me what they're looking for, especially with your offers. So for example, if I'm selling a high ticket coaching offer for agencies, what I'll do is I'll be like, hey, so based on your sales process specifically, like what are you looking for to talk about on this call, right? What are you looking for today on this call specifically? And then they'll tell me, right? Oftentimes they'll just open up about what exactly they're dealing with. And this is where we start taking notes for ourselves, all right? I highly suggest that you always take notes on your sales call as well, which I'll go over here in a second. What I do in my CRM or on a piece of paper is I actually write down every single section, not the questions, but the section on a piece of paper. And as I'm asking them, I fill in my notes under each section. So at the end of the call, if I get a price objection, I can look at the financial section of our call and look at the notes that I wrote down, right? So keep them accountable. Maybe I missed something. And this allows you to stay very organized and make sure you're hitting all your points.
Do you share your screen while you're doing that process, or is it just on your side?
Just on my side. Yeah. So it's just for me to stay organized. Great question. I know some closers who really like to do that. And if that's your style, amazing. Totally go for it. But I like just to have it on my side to stay organized. But awesome question. So for me, this section, when I say what I like to do is after you get like the opening question, the first section of your call, what I want you to dig into is what they do specifically in their business. Okay. It's really important for us to understand what their business is or what they're doing currently, depending on your offer, right? So the questions I'm asking is like, what is your main service, right? What's your main offer? What does that look like? What's the price of that service? So I know how much money they make per deal that bring in, for example, especially in the agency space. How much are you selling Facebook ads for, right? I want to know that. Do you have any downsells or upsells? This is more of like a nuanced question to show that I'm an expert and I understand their business model, right? Does this include coaching calls? Does this include one-on-one? Is it group related? Are you coaching? Depending, again, this is just depending, these are example questions, but it just depends on the business model that they have. This is where I try to understand their business as much as humanly possible. So I want to understand their services, the timelines of those services, how they deliver it, what their specific value points are. And this is really important when we're talking to entrepreneurs because we want to show them that we are an expert and we understand their business model so they feel understood. Now, going into, for me, because I'm selling sales services, I will ask a bunch of questions on their sales process. If you are talking about, for example, SOPs, right? You're talking about operations. This section should be about operations. If you're selling mindset, this section should be about what they're doing for mindset right now. If you're talking selling books or helping people write books, this should be about what they're currently doing within their process to write their novel or whatever they're building out, okay? So for me, I dig into what they're currently doing. So what does your current sales process look like? What are challenges that you're facing? What's working? What's not working? Again, I want to understand what they're struggling with on how I'm going to be able to help them. And we have to understand in great detail what they're doing so that we can actually create, which I'll talk about later, a custom pitch to be able to help them and show them that we can help them in whatever specific issue that they're facing. So dig as deep as you can into this section. Then I go into metrics. So if you notice this sales process, this allows me to qualify them. Are they a good fit? Do they have a certain amount of salespeople on their team? Do they have a sales process at all, right? If they have a really good process, how can I help? If they have no process, right? This is allowing me to qualify them as an individual or as a business. Then we go into metrics. Now, this again is mainly B2B, but you can also replace this with like financial qualification, right? So I want to know how many book calls are they getting and what's their average deal size? We already asked that, but if we didn't, this is a good way to make sure we get that information. What's your profit margin? And the beauty of this is if I know a business is closing 10 deals at 10K, right? And they have 50% profit margins, I know how much money they make, right? Without even asking revenue numbers or how much money they keep, I know exactly how much money they're making. And so now for me, I know that I can position myself without an objection at the end of this call to close them financially, right? So this prevents a financial objection. So we need to make sure we dig into this deeply. A little tip for you. A lot of people don't like to be asked how much money they make out of the blue. But if you ask a whole bunch of micro questions that paint a picture of how much money they're making, they'll just be an open book. So I always start with small. How many calls do you have booked? What is your deal size? What's your closing percentage? What's your profit margin? I now can just do the math and I know how much money they're making, right? And then at the end of all these questions, what's your monthly revenue? And they're going to tell me because I could just do the math on my own, right? And they're very open about it. So now I have a full picture of how much money they're making. And a little key point for you here. In my sales process, I want to set myself up to collect the most amount of cash possible. Obviously, it has to make sense for our prospects, but I also want to make sure that it makes sense for our prospects. And so this is the section of our call where we confirm which package a person should be on. If I can get them into the highest level of piece of my mastermind, or if this is going to be like a downsell, for example. This allows us to make sure we're pitching something that really they need, right? Doing service to our own clients. Cool. And then for me, again, this is what they've tried before. Okay. So have you worked with a sales coach before? Have you worked with a sales manager before? How did that go? What specifically did that look like? Who did you work with? I want to know all of these things. If you're selling agency services, what agency did you work with? How much was that service? This will give us a picture of what they've tried before, okay? I don't know if you've ever dealt with this, but there's nothing worse than getting to the end of a call and going, great, we do group coaching, and they go, oh, I hate group coaching, right? This is where we're able to get ahead of that. Oh, why don't you like group coaching? Oh, well, I never get my questions answered. Okay, cool. That's going to be an objection I'll face later on. So I'm going to position our offer with small groups specifically, and everybody gets their questions answered. And now they don't have that concern, even though it's group coaching, right? Oh, I hate one-on-one coaching. I want to be in a group setting. Okay, right? Now I have that prepared for the end of the call. So this is really helpful. You're also going to get a lot of insight on your industry in this way as well. If they've worked with a certain sales trainer or coach or mindset coach, whatever that might be, we get to learn a little bit about their process as well. Then we're going to ask about team. Now, the team section here is very, very much focused on making sure that they don't have a business partner that should be on this call. or a spouse, a partner that also is going to be part of the decision-making process. So instead of just being like, hey, are you the decision maker? I like to ask, again, get a full picture of their business. Do you have setters? Do you have closers? Do you have admin? Do you have an assistant? Do you have a copywriter? Whatever that might be. Again, this also shows that we're an expert at what we're talking about and that we understand their business. I really love, and this is why I love B2B sales, is if I'm talking to an agency, for example, I know the agency space inside and out. And so I can ask a very specific question. How are your pods structured? And they're like, wow, how does he know that? Right. And so this is a great opportunity to show that you're an expert at what you're talking about. And then this finishes off with covering the partner objection, right? Do you have a business partner? No, I don't. Okay. Or yes, I do. And we can dig into it further. Cool. Are they an equity partner? Oh, no, they're not. Great. Now I know that it's not going to be a concern at the end of the call. Or yes, they are. Great. Do they know you're on this call today? Right? Do they know you're trying to solve this problem? Do you have the permission to solve this problem without them? Right? We can dig into all of this in our discovery. So at the end of the call, we will not get this objection, right? Super important. So we have to make sure we hit all these things. I love to ask timeline question because if a prospect says they want to solve this problem yesterday, why are you thinking about it? You told me you wanted to solve this yesterday, right? Now we can get over the timeline objection of I need 2 weeks, I need a month. This will really keep people accountable. Now, going to the final section of our discovery, we're going to talk about their goals. I like to save their goals for last. And this is specifically why. One, I want to know where they're headed and what their vision is, their passion is. And I want to get them in this really amazing place of being in this mindset of growth. And I want to get to this goal. And this is why, and I want to dig really deep into that specific, right? Why do you want that goal? How long is that going to take you? Why is that goal specifically the plan right now? And then after I get them in this really great space of dreaming and being where they want to be, I want to bring them back down to reality to create a gap of where they are and where they're wanting to go. Okay, it's really important. And so I talk about their goal and then I bring them back down. Okay, where are you at right now? And if it's talking to a business, you want to get to $1 million a month, right? Where are you at right now? We're at 100K a month. Okay, I'm bringing them back down to reality and they feel the weight of where they currently are now. From there, I go into our pitch. All right. Now, if you haven't noticed, I've covered all of my objections now. I have a ton of insight of how their business operates, when it operates, what's working, what's not working, how much money they're making. I have everything I need now to be confident that I can move forward in my pitch. Now, when I'm talking about a pitch, what I'm really talking about is like your offer at the end of the call. When you're talking about your pillars or when you're talking about your offer, what solution that you have. And what I like to do is this part of your call needs to be custom to the person you're talking to, but also consistent so that we can have a consistent pitch every time, right? So there's some nuance to it. So what I like to do is I've actually built a framework with a very good friend of mine named Corey. This framework allows us to be able to tie every single one of our pillars in our pitch. If you have pillars, we'll talk about that in a second, and make it a custom experience for them. So for example, how we do this is we talk about their current state. We remind them of the pain that they're in. And then we talk about how our thing is going to solve that problem. And we're going to finish it by getting them to their end goal, right? So for example, you told me how you are looking to increase your close rate, right? And you're currently at a 5% close rate. Well, this sales framework that I'm going to teach you and implement into your business is going to allow you to increase closing percentage, increase show percentage through X, Y, and Z process to get you to ultimately that 30% close rate, right? You see how I've tied their personal goal with what I teach to get them to their end goal. And what's happening now is we're taking them from their pain and their current state, and we're now the bridge to their desired state. And I actually do this with every single one of my pillars. So for example, if you have 3 pillars, maybe we're going to talk about your team and your offer specifically. You're going to talk about the framework. That's my unique mechanism is the sales framework, right? We're going to talk about whatever the other pillar is. Every single pillar has to have this format. Remember how you don't like group coaching calls? Well, we actually keep it small group coaching so that we can do X, Y, and Z to get you to X, Y, and Z. Does that sound fair, right? And so we're customizing everything that we say based on what we've learned in the discovery, which is also why it's important to take notes, okay? So I have this analogy. It's a really horrible analogy. I'm working on it, which is, I don't know if you have kids or if you ever have been in like a Nerf gun battle. The thing about Nerf guns is you can shoot a bullet and you can pick it up and you can put it in your gun and shoot it back. That's exactly what we're doing here in sales, right? They're shooting a bunch of bullets at us in discovery. We're taking notes, and then in our pitch, we're shooting them all back at them, right? And so I want you to keep that analogy here when we're talking about your sales pitch. So every single pillar does this exact same thing. Really important part of this, you want to get buy-in, a tie down, we call it, after every single pillar. Okay, so remember how you had this problem. Well, we're going to fix it doing these things specifically to get you to your end goal. What I like to do is you don't want to say, do you have any questions? Because everybody's going to say no, don't have any questions. But you're also telling them that they should have questions. So what's going to happen is at the end of the call, they're going to go, I think I need to think about this because I don't know if I have questions right now. Because you've told them a bunch of times, do you have any questions? Right? So instead, what I like to do is, does this make sense? Everybody's going to say yes. Yes, it does make sense. What about this makes sense? Or what are your thoughts on this? They will always give you their thoughts. They're not going to say, no, I don't have any thoughts on this. They're going to say, oh, well, I really like this, or this is exactly what I'm looking for. And now what's going to happen is every single pillar of your pitch, at the end of it, they're going to go, yes, this makes total sense. This is exactly what I'm looking for, right? And at the very end of this pitch, we can tie them down a last time and go, hey, this sounds like this makes perfect sense for you. Would it make sense to move forward? That's my closing line every single call. Does it make sense to get started today? Would this make sense to take payment, right? And they've told me it makes sense so many times now where they're going to have to go against what they've been telling me and say, no, it doesn't make sense. And now I'm a bit confused, right? So now we can have that discussion at the end of the call. And no, I'm moving quickly, but is it all making sense for everybody?
Yes. Yeah, I'm getting great comments in the chat. Yeah, fantastic.
Beautiful. So after we've done the pitch, we get to the price drop section. Now, this is something I wanted to give you guys. I'll keep this relatively quick so we can get into questions and stuff, but we want to make sure we can position ourselves to close and collect the most amount of cash as possible, right? If you have a paid in full option or a payment plan option, we want to ask for that payment plan first before we go to we want to ask for the paid in full first before we get to the payment plan. However you position your pricing, this will be super important. So for me, I know how much money my prospects make now because I've had the discovery, right? I know exactly how much profit they make. So I know how much I can ask for. So I'll use this example. One of the services that we sell at Bad Marketing, it's a 30K a month package, right? So I always start, if they can afford it, I will start with the highest priced package no matter what first. If it makes sense for them, what I'll do is I'll say, hey, listen, this is what I think would work the best for you to get to your end goal. All right, it includes, and I list all the things that it includes. It includes this, it includes this, it includes this, all the frameworks, all the necessary items, whatever it might be, and it's 30K a month. And then I keep my mouth shut and I let them give me a response. And now this is why this is so important. They might say, perfect, let's get started. And then we stop and we collect the money and we move forward and we close the deal, right? They might go, oh, wow, that's way more expensive than I thought, right? And I want you to make sure, don't get nervous and don't get concerned and go to the next price. Talk about it. Got you. What do you mean exactly? It's the most powerful question you can ask in any sales call is, what do you mean, right? What do you mean exactly? Oh, well, I wasn't expecting this to be this much and wasn't part of our budget, whatever that might be. And then, and only then, I go, totally makes sense. This has to make sense for you. So this is what I would suggest instead. And then I go to my next price option, right? This 15K thing. How does that sound? Oh, that works perfect for me. Awesome, right? And then we move forward and we close. But we always want to ask for the biggest package on every single call because you will be shocked how many people will surprise you and want that biggest package. Now, I'm also very ethical with my sales process, right? I want to help people and I don't want to take their money if they don't have it. So I use that to my advantage to build trust. So if I know my prospect cannot afford a 30K thing, what I do is say, hey, listen, this is our highest package. Do not go with this package. I do not think this is good for you right now. And now I'm building trust with them because I'm telling them not to pay me something, right? What I would suggest is this 5K thing instead, right? And I'm making it custom for them. I know it makes sense. I'm building trust through how I'm dropping my price. I know they can afford it because I did a great discovery and then I won't get any price objections and I'll close. So this is kind of my framework to collect the most amount of cash possible. I highly suggest that you implement this. If you don't have more than one pricing with your offer, I really suggest that you have a couple different options, because it allows you to be able to help more people. But also, the quickest way to scale is charge more money, right? If we could charge more money, collect more cash, we can actually have less people in our offers and make more money. So make sure that we're asking for that bigger price point. Finally, to finish all of this off, now we have no objections. We covered all of them in discovery. We pitched them the perfect price point that makes sense for them. We use a closing line. I personally love to use, does this make sense for you? Or does it make sense to get started today, right? Or the Hormozy line of, would you be opposed to getting started today, right? And ideally, we can collect cash on the call. If for some reason there's any objections, right? We know we missed something in our discovery. And then I go to book a second call if I have to, right? If there's some specific reason they just bought a massive warehouse and they have to get cash flow in order, whatever that might be, we're going to book that second call. Now, if for some reason I'll really drill this home, you always want to finish the call with a game plan though, every single time. If they can't close, we're going to talk about when they close. If they can't pay today, when are they going to pay? And the reason why this is important is when we start doing follow up with our prospects, we actually have a reason why we're following up now. And so instead of saying, hey, just following up, we could be like, hey, we discussed you getting started on Thursday, November 26th, right? Does that still work for you? And now we have a reason to follow up with this person over and over and over again. So make sure you have a game plan at the end of every single call. Now, I'm not going to go into this next thing quickly, but I do have a objection handling flow chart. I don't know if you can see this. But basically, it's a giant whimsical about what to do with what objection if for some reason you don't do a good discovery. And you can see over here, every section of the framework aligns with a certain objection that we need to cover. So I will send this to you as well. As you can imagine, it's very big, so there's always stuff being added to this. But this is a really great way to train team members, train yourself on objection handling. So that is the framework, the sales process that we use, and we use this on every single call. I have a setter framework. It's a little bit different than this. I can send it to you, but I wanted to kind of give you the main closing framework and everything attached to that. So hopefully that all made sense and you guys got some value out of that.
Oh my gosh, Curtis. Yeah, I think we got value out of that. Can everybody just drop in the chat while we're going to Q&A real quick? Drop in the chat, scale of 1 to 5, Amazon scale. 1 being crappy, 5 being awesome. Please be honest so Curtis gets good feedback. Curtis, that was...
Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it.
I was hoping it'd be all 5s after I set that one up. Yeah.
All 1s. Ooh.
No, we had it backwards, guys. Yeah. So, okay. Really, really good. So here's what we're going to do. For those of you watching the recording, we're going to break for Q&A. Make sure you're here live if you want to get Q&A from experts like Curtis. Curtis, thank you so much. We will have anything Curtis has mentioned on this call recording for those who are watching recording down below. So all the link stuff, we'll put that down below along with Curtis's info. Like, I highly recommend reaching out to someone like Curtis if sales is a struggle for you. Highly recommend that. If he can't help you, he'll know somebody else who can. We have other experts in this community as well. You see them in the membership area, but I really, you got to get help on sales. It's really important. So we're here to support you in any way we can. But having somebody who's just like specifically going to dial in and spend tons of time in your sales process can really, really move the needle. So Curtis, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. And thanks for everybody's time.
All right, Eric S., you're up. And then I see John, you're up next.
Thanks so much, Curtis. I definitely want to have a conversation probably further about this in general, just for a couple things. I'm the Facebook ads guy. I have Facebook ads offer. I'm curious about, I think that in the somewhat near future, I want to have a setter and closer, and I kind of want you to like teach them and make it happen. What are the rates do you think for commission and base pay for someone like a setter and a closer? And then what does a timeline or order of operations look like for you with me, I guess, making sure that process using your framework is done correctly based on my offer?
Great question. Great question. So we'll break that into 2 parts. How much do you currently charge for your service?
I just doubled it recently. It's $12,000 over 3 months.
Okay. So and is it mainly paid in fulls, or do you like a MRR model where they're paying monthly?
It's $12,000 paid over 3 months. So it's
okay.
4,000 over 3 months. 4,000.
So
4,000.
With a setter, depending on where they're located, and there's a range to this. I'm a big believer in paying my team well so they stick around a long time, right?
Yeah.
The averages you're going to hear for setters is $1,000 base up to about $1,500 base. And then 3 to 5% of cash collected that the closer collects. That's how you'd pay a setter.
Yeah.
I prefer to pay my setters a little bit more or give them something to sell so that they can make more money, right? Especially if there's not, like, for example, if you're not closing a ton of cash flow every single month, your setter's not going to make a lot of money. So I give them a bit of a bigger base so that they're happy. So it could be anywhere from $1,500 a month up to $2,500 a month is like a really average setter base. And then a percentage of the cash collected. All right, so that's the setter wage specifically. For closers, what I like to do is there's two different ways you can pay a closer. A really, really good closer wants to make at least 15K a month as a closer in commission. And the reason I say that is because we want to make sure we can align our closers that come in to make sure they can actually make the money that they'd like to make so they stick around, right? Unfortunately, in the sales space, closers hop around a lot because they want to make more money and they think the next offer is the best offer, right? So we want to compensate them well. So there's two ways we can do that. You can either give them a higher commission on the cash that they collect. It could be like 15 to 20%, for example. On the first, just the 1 month that they collect that cash, they get 15 to 20% commission, right? Or if you have a reoccurring model, you can do 10% of the contract. So they get 10% a month for 3 months, for example, with you. And what this will allow them to do is they can build a bit of a base. And now they can make a bit more consistent money. But if you don't close hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, they only need to close, say, 30 or 40, and they can build a really good base for you, or for them, sorry, to get paid. So that's how I like to do it, either 10% reoccurring or 15% to 20%. Now, one caveat to this, if your offer does a lot of volume, like we've got offers that do like 500K in cash collected, and a closer can collect a couple $100,000 every single month, do not pay them 15 to 20%. They can do 8 to 10%. But it's only for the offers that are more boutique. Maybe you're only collecting, say, 20K a month, 30K a month, or you're doing it in spurts.
Yeah, it's on the lower side there. So I'm curious. So you're saying if I get a closer will take 2,000 per basically on the contract,
Over
however
3
many they
months.
close, even if my volume's not high.
Yeah, especially if their volume's not high, you want to give them a higher commission, especially if your volume's not high, because they need to be able to make their money.
I give 20% on something like that in the setter. Like, let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then for timeline of onboarding, what I like to say is depends on the person. If, for example, for me, I know the agent space inside and out. I can like get in there and do something really quickly as far as collecting cash. If it's a newer closer, give them around 30 calls for them to get ramped up. That's kind of my rule of thumb. So that could be 90 days for you. It could be 2 weeks for you. But 30 calls is kind of a sweet spot for them to get to the point where they're able to start consistently closing deals. The framework is super fast to implement, so that will be quick. But actually getting them ramped up takes a little bit longer.
I guess what I'm saying is, okay, saying I have the money, right, to start the whole process to make sure it's all done. When am I contacting you? When am I contacting whoever the setter is and the closer to start making this all happen is like the kind of like order of operations I was looking for.
Got you. Yeah. So for me specifically in my process, we should have a chat and I can go over it because it's really dependent on every single business. For example, like you might not need a setter or a closer. You might need to be more efficient and get better at sales. And so I'd rather fix that first.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. But yeah, so we can absolutely have a conversation about that and see what you need specifically, because I don't want to say you need a setter and a closer and then they don't have enough money and then it complicates everything.
Yeah,
And then
let's have a conversation and have that conversation then. Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, great. John.
Thanks so much. Great information. Love the flow going from A to Z, kind of taking them through a nice process. We are in the B2C space. So a lot of the questions and things really wouldn't apply when you're kind of when you're not talking to a business owner. Do you have a flow for more of a B2C business?
Yes. Awesome question. So the flow will stay the same. The questions will change. So instead of having a section about their business, it'll be a section about, for example, you're a fitness offer. What are you doing in your health journey right now? Instead of like, what business offer do you have? So only thing that will change is you're going to change the sections to align with your offer. And then when you're doing B2C, it's a lot less of a logical number sale and a lot more of an emotional sale.
Yeah,
So we need to go a little bit
absolutely.
deeper into the mindset part of things than in a business offer would be. But yes, this framework will work great for that. You just got to change some of the sections. Like for example, metrics, they don't have a package they're selling, right? So we would change that to more financials. Like
Right.
what are you making on you could dig into their job, for example, and figure out how
Uh-huh.
much they make on a regular basis. Or
Right.
if it's nothing to do with biz op where they're trying to make money, you just have to have an open conversation with them about their finances to make sure that you can vet them financially.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that when you were going through that process, because we're more of, coaching, with trying to help them personally, through very, very different areas of that. But, we can't really get into, what are you making now? What do you want to make? Those, because that's not really relevant to what we're doing. We're trying to help them recover from abuse. So, yeah, I was kind of getting a little bit stuck with when you got to that process about trying to pre-qualify them, because a lot of folks that we're dealing with, have been financially abused. And so maybe they've recovered from that a little bit, but they're still, like, I want to keep my stuff over here. I don't want to give it anything out.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of difficult. So it's going to be a little touchy trying to pre-qualify somebody financially through the call.
So two things I want to say about that. You're absolutely right, right? It's different. There's some nuance to it. And especially if we're talking about abuse, you got to be very careful about that.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, I don't want you to have the mindset of it's harder because they're not in business. Because that's just you saying that, right? A lot of people are totally happy to talk about money, but if we're uncomfortable asking about it, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
And so you can do it very differently. So for example, it's like prospects. So what are you doing for work right now? Right.
Yeah.
That'll tell us a lot about how much money they're making, right? Is it
Right.
full-time? Is it part-time? Do you have two jobs? Do you have one job, right? Are you like, there's a lot of, or you can just be really open with them. Hey, this has to make sense for you. It's going to cost money. Like, I want to make sure it makes sense for you. So like, what are you doing for work? And have a really clear, very open conversation, and it'll make them feel safe. It'll make them feel a bit more ability to be open. It doesn't feel like you're going to take advantage of them because you're asking all these specific questions to figure out how much cash they have. Just be really open with them. And especially depending on the prospect, people will really appreciate it. So
I love that approach. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say this one thing about this too. Sales and discovery is about getting to the truth, right? We want to get to the prospect's truth. And so that's all it is. So we can do that through asking really empathetic questions for them to share the truth. We can do that by just having a really blunt conversation. So if that's in mind, you won't have any problem with that.
Yeah, I love that. And just getting to the truth, like you said, just getting to the truth. And so thank you so much, Curtis. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sam.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, because this is so, first of all, I feel completely vindicated because this is exactly like what I do, except a million times better. Like I've been doing it like with crayons on on scrap paper. And now I feel like somebody's just handed me like the 120 markers, with the really beautiful, like
I'm happy to hear that.
So good, so good, so good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
That's
okay,
all.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very special.
Next question. Who's got another question? Kyle, Eli, y'all good? Jamie? Evans? Jamie, you good?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, it was very helpful. I think in a lot of ways, from that scaling perspective, and just those little details, focusing on their pains and really gaining that trust and the follow-up. I'm new to this from a coaching perspective, from a group coaching perspective. So a lot of the pathways, and you're going to send that stuff, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything we talked about, I'll give you guys. You can make your own templates and everything. I'll send them over to you in docs.
Yep. No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. I'll say one thing to kind of cap all this off. The number one thing that I experience in my offer, right, when I'm talking to entrepreneurs that are in sales, is a lot of entrepreneurs have naturally had to do sales their whole lives if they're in this space. And so they just automatically go, well, I've closed a lot of deals, so I must be good at sales. And it's not that they're not good at sales, but oftentimes they're lacking so much of these pillars to create consistency in sales. So the last thing I want to say is make sure, no matter if you've collected millions and millions over the last few years, that you have this in place. Because if you ever decide to go on vacation or you want to hand off your sales process, it's going to be so hard unless you have this proven system aligned on paper for somebody. So that's the really main thing here. Make sure that you're taking care of your system so that you can take care of people and your business as things grow. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions?
Actually, I do have another question, Curtis. What do you find is like the biggest challenge? So do you think it's an individual thing, as far as the whole sales process?
For like you in sales, you mean like what I see?
Yeah, I think just in a sense, just in general, I know a lot of times, sometimes people's biggest challenge is just getting that momentum going.
Yeah.
And realizing that it is a process,
Yeah.
and just I think it's a two-way street from the perspective of sometimes the person that you're talking to has that fear of signing on. It's that uncertainty.
Yeah.
And so really just kind of like you said, providing that trust, providing that openness, providing that transparency, asking those questions of, so, why do you feel that way? Or what makes you ask that question, so that interest is focused on them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The trust and certainty in our prospects and our sales, when they come through our process, it is not built by you having a really good offer. It's built by being heard, being understood. And I joke a lot that like sales is very much therapy, and that we are asking people questions to tell us what they need so that we can give them what they're looking for, right? Or we can help them come to the conclusion of what they need. And so through that, a lot of salespeople have the challenge of their own mindset and having limited beliefs on what's possible. That's the biggest challenge I see for salespeople of like they cast their own fear on their prospects of I'm uncomfortable to ask for more money, so therefore my prospect will not be comfortable paying more money, right? That is a us problem, not a them problem. And then on the prospect side, it's the same thing as like for fear. If somebody has a fear of something, we have to help them get through that fear through asking really good questions. And the more you know your offer, the more that fear is going to be specific for you, and it's going to be a bit different for everybody. So, yeah, hopefully that was helpful. But great thoughts on that for sure.
Thank you.
Great ideas. Great thoughts. Eric S. Anybody else got a question before Eric S. just back in? Somebody hadn't had a question yet? Evans, you good? Santa, Eric C. Cool. Mark, good. All right. Eric S., you're up, buddy.
Just thinking of a question everyone that would apply to everybody, because I could keep doing it. But the idea of what about, so a lot of people that come to us, right? Sometimes they're not ready for it now. How do you handle the I'll be ready for this in 3 months and make sure that you can actually close it in 3 months?
Great question. So first and foremost, there's two different ways with that. Either it's I'm not ready now because there is some sort of a uncertainty objection, meaning that they're not confident you can actually get them to their goal. So they're going to say that to get off the call, right? So that's the number one thing that could be. So we need to get past that and make sure that they are actually confident what we can do. But in your space specifically, there's a lot of logistic objections, meaning I'm in a contract with somebody for the next 3 months that I cannot get out of. Very different process, right? And so in that case, if it's truly a logistic problem, if you're selling services, B2B, what I like to do is I have a section of like agency specific, like, are you working with a media buyer? Are you working with an agency right now? So that I can know if there is going to be that issue. And there's two different ways you can do it. You can take a deposit on the call so that 3 months from now, when they are ready logistically, they can get started immediately, or you make a plan. Whether that's we're going to run an audit, we're going to meet in 2 weeks, and now they're still in your process and your pipeline. Or I book a call for like a month prior to that contract ending so that I can check in with them and then ideally take payment for a start date. So two different ways you can go with that.
My specific problem is that I teach Facebook ads to businesses, but oftentimes the owner I'm talking to is the one going to be implementing. So sometimes they don't have the person on board yet. And so they're just
Gotcha.
like, well, I'm not in a contract. I know I want to learn this. I don't have the person technically on board yet, or they have too much, they don't have the bandwidth for this yet, even though it's only 4 hours a month. It's more that the owners have the bandwidth to think about having them have the bandwidth. And so I'm
Yeah.
just curious about that. But anyway.
So we can talk about that because that in itself is a mindset shift that we have to make. Because if the business owner doesn't have time, they have time. They absolutely have time. So that's something that we can overcome. If they like, for example, I sold an offer for a really long time, which was like a marketing offer for a coaching offer, and there was it was for media buyers, and there was a lot of times where the business owner didn't have a media buyer yet. So it was like, I need to hire this person to then put them through your training. And so in that case, it's like, it's a logistic issue where we just have to wait until they get that person on board. So hopefully that answers your question, Eric.
That's good. Sam.
Yeah, the things I'm really trying to like suck into my brain are this really answering their questions with more questions. Because, you know, the big red button in the middle of my chest that says, I'll help.
Yeah.
Like, here, let me help solve this problem for you right now, is not actually helping. And when I do remember to ask questions, it's amazing. I just, the last time I was selling, I had somebody who, it seemed like she had a price objection, but then through a little bit more questioning, she was like, she actually just didn't want to pay the financing fee. She was happy to pay the full freight. She just didn't want to pay the, you know, whatever I had bumped it, you know, the 15% I'd bumped it up for. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can knock that off for you, no problem. And then she was fine. So I was like, oh, right. Find out what they're actually saying. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key. Is what are they saying with this objection, right? What is the actual meaning behind that? And like you said, we need to ask more questions to get to the bottom of their questions, so that we can actually know and help them.
Is there anything you do like right away to welcome them, to like make them feel special, you know, yeah, you bought something. And to also hopefully like leap over that vulnerability hangover, or that, oh, I just spent a ton of money hangover.
Yeah. Going off everything we just talked about, you asking incredible, great personal questions will build that trust and make them feel special, right? Using their name, right? All these things will add to that experience. And so, yes, in this framework, I talk about getting to the point really quickly, but we can do that with a big smile on our face and great energy and still make people feel welcomed. And I could tell, Sam, you naturally do that. And so I don't think you have to really work on that aspect. You'll naturally make people feel comfortable and safe and feel excited. And so the more questions we ask, the deeper they go, the more trust they build, the better experience they have. So just question, and that'll open up the doors for that.
But you don't send them flowers or cookies right away, huh?
Awesome. I love that too. If you want to send cookies, that would be a great campaign. Sending cookies to people and they have book a appointment. That would increase show rate. Yeah. Obviously you could play around with like marketing stuff and have really fun videos sent to them, or emojis or whatever that is, but or just have like a couple nice things you say at the beginning of the call to get people start like excited. But yeah, just ask great questions.
Cool. Excellent. Any other questions? Or does this make sense? Okay.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Then let's do this real quick, rapid fire. Well, first of all, does anybody have anything they need solved today? You're on this call. We have a couple extra minutes. Got some great experts here. Anybody got anything you need solved today? Just want to hold space for that. Going once.
Everybody has a perfect business.
I know. This is amazing. I don't even know why you're here, Curtis. I don't know what these questions are. They're closing too much already. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. In the last like couple of minutes, everybody just say one thing, like one sentence. Sam, you got a question? Go ahead.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Just in the last year or so, I've had this experience that I've never had before, which is having great sales conversations with people. They they're either in or we book that they're going to talk again. We're going to talk again in 2 days. And then they completely ghost. Won't respond to emails, won't respond to texts, won't respond to phone calls. I mean, and to me, it's among other things, it's just so rude. I'm like, we were friends. Like we just we were building something together, and now like I can't get the time of day from you. What's going on?
Yeah, it happens. That is a sign of a couple different things, right? You didn't go deep enough for them to really feel the urgency and the need of the thing that you're helping them with, right? If we don't go deep enough in our discovery, oftentimes as salespeople, we tend to coach too much or we talk too much and we assume that we gave them so much value and we helped them so much, but in reality, they don't feel heard enough. And so then they just, this isn't going to be what I need. I'm not going to come back, right? So that's the number one thing I see is we don't go deep enough into their actual needs and pains for them to feel like they actually need to move forward. And sometimes people just are really, really busy and it might not be actually as important to them as they really let on. And we're competing against social media and family and all these different things. So it's probably a mixture of those things, but it does happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay. Then quick feedback for Curtis. Curtis, we love doing this here just to give you feedback. Everybody just go around the room. We'll start at the top. Sam, you're up. Just quick takeaway. So Sam, then me, we'll just go in a circle.
This is so silly, but I've never thought of this. I have my little sales conversation outline thing that I always have during sales, but I've never thought of like printing it out with space underneath so I could just make those same notes every time in the same
It's a great
way.
idea.
Yeah.
Excellent. For me, I'm going to sell next week using a Google Doc.
Cool.
Yeah, I have not practiced that before. I think I'm going to actually share my screen because I want them to see what I'm writing down and confirm that I'm on the same page with them just for commitment. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Mark, then Olivia, then Eli. Mark, you're muted.
Once again, reinforcing the idea that you don't sell what you do, you sell what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
Yep. So true.
Yeah.
Love it.
And customizing the pitch to that.
Yes. Olivia, then Eli.
Yeah, I think the emphasis on having the discovery be really solid and then just wiping out the objections before you even get to the end is profound, efficient. Really excited about the possibilities for that and also the wording of some of your questions, just small tweaks that make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So true. Okay. Eli, then Jamie.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a ton to Curtis. Piggybacking on everybody else, but my takeaway is around the personalization in a text message through iMessage in the morning. There's nothing more that I hate than being stood up on a sales call or being ghosted, and they have the intention to book the call. Nothing more than I hate. So
Yeah,
I think
it's
that's a
awful.
cool little tidbit. Personalization is what we're focused on right now. So thanks, man.
Love it. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have to second Eli on that. It's just that's sometimes the toughest part. But I think similar to what Mark said, I'm sorry if I'm hold on. Yes, Mark. It's not what you do, it's you sell what they need. That's a big one for me, is I'm even just trying to remember that, because where I came from, it was all about pitching yourself and your expertise. You know, I come from the agency world, so when we would go in front of clients, like that's what we did. This is what we do. And it's interesting because it really, I mean, even in that situation, it's about what they need. And I think, yeah, and just, you reinforce just a lot of, like Olivia said, you reinforce a lot of tweaks. Like I have the questions, I have those different things, but really just kind of reinforcing the package idea and the process and the consistency. You talked about that a lot in the beginning, and couldn't agree more. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent points. Excellent points. I'm learning so much as y'all tell me what you're learning. Evans, then John, Eric, Santa.
First, thanks, Curtis. Appreciate you for showing up and sharing with us. I like the whole, like, from the beginning, humanizing the experience in a world of automations, right? Just giving that human touch to it, because one, people are looking for that, but two, now you're going sort of against
Yeah.
what everybody else is doing, so it makes you stand out a little bit more. So I love that.
Very good
Appreciate
point.
that.
I love that. Love
Excellent.
that.
John, Eric, Santa.
Yeah, so much, Curtis. Thank you so much. I love the questions that you're asking at the top that will overcome the objections at the bottom. You know, kind of structuring your questions up here that are going to help you overcome objections at the bottom of the pitch. And also, I really love that. Does this make sense? Instead of asking them if they have any questions, because I think human nature is we always ask, "What, do you have any questions?" Well, if not, then let's close. You know, instead of saying, "Does this make sense?" It's more of a yes or no at that point, and then you can go from there, A or B. So thanks for sharing that. That was worth the call right there. Just learning that.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that.
Great information, though. Thank you.
All right, 30 seconds each. Eric, then Santa.
Yeah, I really liked the going deep beforehand to, like I said, basically mirroring what Olivia said, just so that by the time you get to any where there might be any objections, you've pretty much addressed everything. So again, getting to that truth so that you're on the same page, and so that, all the doors are open. So it's pretty easy to see where everything is.
Awesome.
Love it.
All right. Curtis, thank you so much, buddy. Like, truly, very valuable information. You just freaking give so much. Thank you. Really appreciate this. And in 5 seconds or 10 seconds, who's your ideal person? Who do you want us to refer to you? Because now we have your contact info. We know you're good.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, first off, thanks for everybody's time. I really appreciate it. It was amazing jamming with you all today and getting to know everybody and their amazing offers. For me, I like to work with business owners that are selling to other business owners, or I also just help people in sales in general. So anybody that's looking to optimize their sales system, create some consistency, I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Brilliant. We know those people. Thanks, buddy. Y'all have an awesome weekend. Do the work, get the results.
Have an amazing day, everybody.
Okay, we'll have this recording out to y'all all by Monday. Bye, everybody.
Appreciate you guys.
Curtis, thank you, buddy.